You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast, the post-game show, and we're going to get into a lot of stuff here. First of all, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook app. Here's the deal. Put down code word PHNX, bet on an NFL game. If either team scores, which they will, you know what? You get $100 in free plays. Doesn't get much better than that, $5 down. All right, let's get into it. First of all, hello, guys. William Brad Allis, John Schuster. I am merely Mike Luke. Very fortunate enough to be joined by two of the dons of the Arizona sports scene.
Shu, our track record continues with people who once read scores for us going big time.
Right.
One of our former, one is in Phoenix market. He's also does fill-ins on every national show. That'd be Jody Ayler. One was Rob Lance, who's been on this show, who became program director, was the afternoon host, is now doing finer work in the community as an educator. Mike Luke, hosting like 107 podcasts, writing the exclusive history of the post-Tomey era, on injured reserve for the Washington football team as quarterback. I mean, I feel like we're doing something right. It just wasn't for our careers.
No. That is how altruistic you and I are, Brad. We're just great people.
It's the like Mike Holmgren coaching tree where they were all more successful than he was.
But you know what? They all look back at Mike Holmgren and they said, you know what? Without Mike Holmgren, I'm not there. So
I mean, with all those people saying without Brad and Shu, where would we be?
That's correct. Guys, you know what's fun about this? And I'd love to get both of you on as much because you guys are kind of synonymous with each other. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. But this, Brad and Shu, we've talked about it a little bit. It's 97-45. I know these teams that Arizona's playing aren't great, but at the same time, doesn't this feel far more like the basketball that we all grew up watching?
Brad, have alphabetical. Go ahead.
This not only feels like some of those classic, not even classic loot teams, but was it the 14 team under Miller that just wiped the floor with mediocre teams? And I think we're going to look back and see that this team out of the three is okay. North Dakota State traditionally is a pretty good basketball program. Are they a tournament team? No, but they're going to, they'll end up being like 16-12 and in the semifinals of their conference tournament. The first two teams were terrible basketball teams, but you look back at some of those loot teams, some of the classic loot teams, they did not let inferior teams hang around. They used those runs. In this case, there was that run to start the game. There was the run to end the half. And then the run kind of was trying to get the kids to bed, and I missed a lot of the highlights. But, every time you look up, 11-0. And then suddenly at the halftime, it's a 20-something point game, even with the half-court shot. And then you look up, and it's I'm doing the math, and Matt Muehlbach's talking about his hair, and Cindy Brunson's talking about Washington State and Jack Murphy's wife. And you're like, wait, that's 40-something. And that's just how this team's going to be when they're going good. Now, we wait for adversity to hit, and we haven't seen that yet, and we probably won't see that until they go to Vegas. But so far, so good. They've done about everything, not only you could ask of them, but hope of them in looking like an upper echelon Pac-12 basketball team.
Shoot.
Yeah, it's hard. They're offensively, they are very impressive. Frankly, defensively, they're very impressive, too. The fact that they're a lot more aggressive, I think, defensively than maybe a lot of people anticipated. They do not mind stretching the floor. And we've talked a lot over the years about utilizing defense to get into transition and score on the offensive end. And this team has no problem picking up half court, trapping, picking up three-quarter court, trying to make things happen. They want to move quickly. They want to get into transition, and they have been obviously very effective in doing that. All of that said, I think North Dakota State could be okay. Their schedule's brutal tonight. I mean, you play last night in Vegas, you take a bus to Tucson, and a team like Arizona that wants to run and has depth anyway is going to create a lot of problems for that. But nevertheless, all of that as an aside, it was clear from the opening tip which team was superior. And there were a lot of Wildcats who played very well tonight. And most notably, the transformation of Christian Koloko in the first 3 games of this year has been very impressive up to this point. He is more than I thought coming into this year, and Mike, you and I had talked about this a little bit on a variety of forums, how I thought Koloko was the most important player on Arizona's roster. I still go with that. But from a defensive standpoint and from a rebounding standpoint and kick out some outlet passes and reset the offense, they're utilizing him in offensive sets. And he looks relatively comfortable doing it. The offseason transformation between what we saw last year and what we've seen in the early stages with Koloko has been remarkable up to this point.
Brad, he had I think Shu makes a great point there. Two-part. First of all, he looks way more comfortable offensively than I think anybody thought that he was going to, especially he had a move in the low post where he faked like he was going left, right, then comes back right with the hook. And it's like, where in the world did that come from? And then defensively, I think that this is a guy that, and again, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I don't know that we've really seen a defensive interior shot blocking presence like this since, John Schuster's guy, Lauren Woods 20 years ago.
Yeah, and we talk about Lute a lot with Tommy Lloyd because the Gonzaga system is so similar and the style of play is so similar. But one thing I think you're also seeing that's reminiscent of Olsen is the development of guys longer term. Miller, from day 1 to like day 50, we saw a great transformation. Then not a lot long term. Now, that's not true in every case. Solomon Hill was a guy who grew slowly and a few other guys. If you're talking about an Olsen player that Koloko reminds me of from a development standpoint, it's Jordan Hill, a guy who was so raw coming in, but you could see that ability. And I saw it 2 years ago. I think we all talked about how Koloko, oh man, if he can develop, if he stays, well, a lot of those ifs are being answered. And I don't know whether it was that full year in the weight program that he didn't get because of COVID, or if Tommy Lloyd's reputation as a development coach combined with a guy like Murph, who even as an undergrad used to work with guys, or a guy like Steve Robinson, who's worked with, you name, great big men at North Carolina for 20 years almost. His transformation, for whatever it is, and maybe it's just the fact that this is a free-flowing offense and you don't have to think as much. Whatever it is, his transformation has been staggering, and he overshadows your guy, Dallin Terry, who's much improved over last year. But what Koloko's become now from last year to this year, quite remarkable, and he's really fulfilling the promise that I think we all saw, but were afraid we'd never realize, because he'd either get impatient or because it would never quite develop as he got recruited over.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. And here's where it surprises me a little bit is we've seen guys here at the U of A with hand issues. I think back to a guy like an Ed Stokes that, you look at Ed Stokes and physically he could do everything, except he just really couldn't catch the ball. It was always an issue to finish around the hoop. Caleb Tarzewski got a little better, but you generally don't see big men develop hands, develop that kind of dexterity that we've seen from Koloko there, Shu.
Scott, by the way, joined us live, Mike, and said very much the same thing in regards to the way that Koloko's hands have improved so significantly. Mm-hmm. And that has allowed him to be a surprisingly effective option on the offensive end. He doesn't look like I anticipated going in. The Koloko was going to be a defensive presence, a guy who got double figures in rebounds, and if he scored, he was going to score junk baskets. But he wasn't going to really be part of the offense. Arizona would, pass a lot, get some open looks, and then if they missed a shot, maybe Koloko could keep a possession alive via an offensive rebound. On the defensive end, he gets a rebound, finds an outlet, and they're running, and that's his role. But he looks a lot more comfortable in the offense, and that gives Arizona a lot of times 5 legitimate options on the floor at any given time, and that makes it a lot more difficult for teams to defend. Now, again, as Mike, you noted, as Brad, you noted, we've now seen 3 games against clearly inferior competition, and Arizona doing so at McHale Center. So like you guys, I'm very interested to see when things don't necessarily go well on the road, how does Arizona travel? How does the offense work? How do things develop in those situations? And when Arizona is perhaps challenged a little more, to what degree are they able to step up? So I think this does become a very interesting weekend for Arizona basketball in the Tommy Lloyd era.
One thing I want to add about Koloko is let's also remember this is a guy who hasn't been playing basketball very long. Right. Started playing in 8th grade, 9th grade, moved to America, had to learn the language. Still scratching the surface. Unlike, and I don't quite remember Ed Stokes' background, but I think he'd been playing ball his whole life. Obviously, Tarczewski had been playing a long time. So we don't know, was it that he had bad hands or was just honestly learning how to catch a basketball in a way that wasn't, because even in his prep school, he was the 5th option. He was all offensive rebounds and putbacks. I don't know if he was at the AAU level, Mike. You'd know more than I would. But this is a guy who's learning to receive passes for the first time. And frankly, this team gets the ball inside. And again, inferior competition, I get it. But they feed the post really well.
They do.
I can't remember the last time Arizona was this effective at feeding the post. Of course, how many Arizona teams have had this effective of a front court in scoring? Maybe you go to that Ayton, Yvonne combo or Doosan combo. Sorry, but yeah, Arizona hasn't had 2 scoring posts that haven't been raw athletes like these two. But they get him and Tabellis the ball really well, and to their credit, both guys catch it really well.
All right, I'll tell you this. If you're not on DraftKings Sportsbook app, you should be on DraftKings Sportsbook app. Here's why. You throw down $5 on an NFL game if you're a new customer, and guess what? You get $100 in free plays if an NFL team scores in the game you bet. Guess what? That's going to actually happen. The other reason you want to hop on here right now, fellas, is this is a new era of Arizona basketball where I think you're going to start looking at the over in games a lot here, fellas. I think this is a team that we talked about that there's nothing fluky about it. And I thought Matt Muehlebach made a good point. And let's be honest, when doesn't Matt Muehlebach make a good point? When he said, when you run, and he said this obviously as a Lute Olson disciple, it's got to be consistent. It can't just be something where you say, okay, let's try to run here for a couple minutes. And then just because kids aren't wired like that. This is a team that's going to get up and down the court. So again, take the over. This is Arizona only, 21 and up. Gambling problem, 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. Eligibility restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. All right, Shu, first of all, I think my read was actually a natural segue right there into this team getting up and down on the court and Matt Muehlebach's point.
Mike and Brad, are you aware of what the line was for this game tonight?
I know the halftime over hit because apparently if you rewatch the video of that shot, you'll see people behind the benches celebrating a little too excitedly. But I don't know what the over was for the entire game.
Don't even worry about the over and under for a moment. Worry about the line, the spread.
Oh, the line. Okay. Yeah, was it?
Arizona
it was
last
18.
night. Arizona last night was 15.5. That line ballooned to 17 and 18 before the game. 17 and 18 before the game, and it was still a steal. What did Arizona win by? 40-something tonight? And it was always going to be 40-something for the last, 10 minutes of the game. The point here is that if you're looking at something right now, the way that Arizona scores, frankly, the way that Arizona has defended up to this point, you may want to take a serious look at what their spreads are and maybe see what DraftKings can do for you in that regard, because they have dominated the competition so far.
Yeah, guys, I think Nick Howard makes a great point. He says everyone wants to talk about our offense, but the real story the first few games has been our defense. And to me, that's a little bit of a two-part part, and that this team is totally cool with extending pressure when they need to. But in the past, like under a Miller team, if Arizona got a stop, they weren't going anywhere because they were bringing the ball up the court. In all fairness, the defense wasn't designed to get it. When Arizona gets a stop here, they're turning that into offense very quickly there, William.
Yeah, and if you look at, not only are they turning into offense, but, Miller's whole thing was he didn't want to gamble. He did not want to extend the defense, miss the steal, or go for the block, miss the block, give up the easy bucket. How many easy buckets have this team given up? Not many. So not only are they able to turn those big plays, the steals, the blocks, the long rebounds into offense, they're not giving up easy buckets. I mean, tonight, North Dakota State shot 26%. I know the other night it wasn't much better. So not only are they gambling, and I don't even know if it's gambling because that's the design of the defense, much like it was for Luke's defense, but they're staying disciplined at the other position. So it's not like one guy gambles, one guy over-rotates to help him out, and suddenly someone's getting an easy layup. There aren't many easy buckets against Arizona. If anything, they might give up a few easy looks from the outside, but I can't remember a whole lot of guys either breaking that press or getting the easy looks down low. I know it's happened a couple times, but it's not a frequent thing, which, again, shows that this is a very well-coached defense, and he keeps adding new wrinkles. That three-quarter court press tonight was something we haven't seen much of.
Are you guys surprised by how seamless this has been? Again, I get the competition isn't great, but both of you, I mean, you guys have seen a lot of basketball, a lot of Arizona college basketball. Are you surprised by, with the transition, just how quickly this has been, Schu and Brad?
Yeah, I am. This has been whatever simplicity that Arizona has been willing to do has worked very well. Their positioning is very good. And on the defensive end, they know what they're doing. They're utilizing length to their advantage and getting some easy buckets. And maybe that helps a little bit. The fact that they're willing to be as aggressive as they are allows you to get a lot of buckets on the inside. And then it feels a lot more seamless than maybe it is. And I'm really interested. There was a point in the first half where they had a possession or two where the offense seemed difficult. And it looked weird because the offense hasn't seemed difficult for them all year long. So when they play someone who matches them up physically and defensively, I'm wondering how well they're going to respond and how messed up things may ultimately look, and then how seamless it is. But one of the things that, since we play the comparison game a little bit, and I think, Mike, you were the one who mentioned Lauren Woods. That Arizona team had a willingness to extend defensively, and as a result, get out in transition because they knew Woods was back there as a defensive stopper. In that regard, this team's very similar, because one of the reasons I think that they haven't given up easy buckets is because Coloco's there on the back end, or sometimes because Ballo's there on the back end. And those guys are a lot bigger than I think Tommy Lloyd kind of anticipated when you're coming into a new program. It's kind of like, wait, I've got two dudes who are 7'1", who are kind of athletic, and if I can teach Coloco some basic principles to not overextend, I have an opportunity for some fast breaks and to make things difficult for other teams on the interior. Yeah, I'll take that. And as a result, maybe Arizona has extended its defense a little bit further than maybe we anticipated, because Lloyd knows that he has stoppers on the inside who can make things difficult, and as a result, he can take a few more chances.
I would also add to that, and Schu, that's a great point, but that Tubelis is also a guy who not skating, much like Caleb Tarczewski, who wasn't a shot blocker, but when you've got a lanky 7-footer or a massive 7-footer like Ballo and Tubelis on the floor, there's not a lot of room in the paint to operate if you're an offensive player. So I think you mix that in, and I think the shot blocking is absolute. I would say, Mike, to your point with the transition, how many freshmen are playing meaningful minutes?
Yeah, none.
This isn't for college basketball, especially. I mean, Dallin Terry's only a sophomore. Ballo's been in college, I think, 3 years. I think he's still a freshman. And even the guys who are younger, the sophomores, most of them are European, from that European system where they played with the same team. Combine that, I know Tommy Lloyd is a rookie. He's got 3 head coaches on the bench. He got Robinson. He's got Murph, Jason Gardner. People forget Gardner's with, and Gardner can't do a whole lot on court, but that's yet another guy who's been a head coach. Then you throw in the guy from the Suns who was a player development coach,
Ricardo.
Is it Foyes? I don't know. Ricardo. But his job is player development. So you've got all these older guys, and again, most of them are sophomores, but they're older. The core has played together. You've got kind of a common language, I think, of the European basketball that Ricardo does. So I think it's still a perfect storm that it's worked like it's worked. But I think if we were to dissect it, with Miller teams that were not only bringing in new guys, but bringing in a lot of freshmen, he was still teaching. And that's why his teams, I think, always caught fire if they were going to catch fire in February. He finally had everything installed.
Right.
With this team, you've got, 5, 6 guys who've played together. You mix in a couple European players. Kim Aiken is 33 years old. Justin Kyer's 28. Omar Ballo looks like he's about 35. But they're old for college basketball, and I think that's helped. But it's also, I think they've caught a little lightning in the bottle. And now, again, we'll see what happens when they play Wichita State. We'll see what happens when they get Michigan. They've got that brutal stretch December early, late December, early January. I think they're on the road for 4 straight games, including right now against 3 ranked teams. But right now, you couldn't ask for much more than a 40-point win where you went cold for 5 minutes, and then the 2 blowout wins we've seen in the last 2 games. I mean, it's pretty spectacular.
The great thing, too, about being here at AZ Wildcats podcast at PHNX is that the people here allow me to do and work with the people that I want to and the people that I really respect. And, during my time in the radio, I came across a lot of those people, none more so than John Schuster, Brad Allis, Kevin, Anthony Gimino, Rob Lance, Tony Gimino. Sorry about that. And that's just what's cool. It's guys that I truly respect. And this is a great forum for it. These guys are going to be on here as much as I can possibly wrangle them in. Brad's got a real-time job. Brad's got a couple kids that he's got to look after, but love to have Brad on. By the way, we're not going anywhere. I just wanted to get that read by the same way.
Speaking of which, for Nick, who wanted, if you don't know, people.
Yes, Brad, fill him in because that went across the screen. So let's fill him in.
On Facebook, I do something I call Confessions of a Horrible Father. I'm up to 5,000 something. We're going to hit 6,000 soon. If you want the story, I am in my son's room. My son lives in the dining room. Our house is small. It's my wife and I started our house. We refied in 2008. My son got so sick of sharing a room with his sister, he moved into the dining room. His PlayStation is on a desk. This is the bookshelf behind me with all my mini helmets. It's mine in the room. My daughter set up the kennel. We had an ill dog, but more to keep her dog, which is a German Shepherd Husky mix, away from the sick dog. She has now spent the last 5 nights sleeping in the kennel. So my daughter is sleeping in the dog kennel. The dog is sleeping in her bed, and my son sleeps in the dining room. And any attempt to buy him a new bed to put in the dining room has been met with, bro. He says bro a lot. I don't like it, but bro. The couch is more comfortable. So he sleeps on a love seat in the dining room, which my computer is propped up on as I have my makeshift studio. But Mike and Shu's backgrounds were so cool, I wanted the mini helmets behind me.
Well, I'm liking the Brad Allis background.
I like the Brad Allis.
Pretty sweet.
Honestly.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I got the mini helmets. Most of them are custom jobs too, but
you guys real quick,
horn.
You want to see what Tony Gimino dropped me off yesterday?
Of course.
Check this out.
Cool memorabilia.
While Mike's pulling that out, I think all of those mini helmets with my small head, I might be able to fit into all of those.
You probably could.
Yeah, and maybe they're concussion protocol safe, and I might be in really good shape.
If not, I have a few real size helmets down here too.
I can't fit into those.
Mike Rozier autographed Nebraska Heisman helmet.
I can definitely fit into that.
Dude, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
and by the way, he brought me a Barry Bonds rookie card with an autograph on it. Tony's a good dude.
Doesn't like that very
Tony
much.
just burning money now that he's got the cushy government job?
Oh, that's it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's get some questions. Let's get back to some questions here. Okay. Now the question, and this is kind of this is an interesting point that a couple people are making right here. Now the question is, these games have been all up and down, right? And now you're going to get into a game. There's going to be a half-court setting. There's going to be half-court situations here going forward. Now, I look at the talent on this team, and I'm not necessarily concerned about it, but I will say this. I don't exactly know when the going gets tough who that guy is. I think there's guys that are perfectly capable of it, but I think that's a valid question that some people are throwing in there.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we talked about when we did some of those preseason podcasts, and I know you and Shu have talked about it as well, is, the lack of a traditional point guard. I know it's supposed to be Kriisa, but it's what we thought it would be. It's kind of point guard by committee. But sometimes you're going to get one of those games where you need your point guard to run the show. And right now, if I had to guess who was going to get into the lane and be that creator, you'd almost have to hand the ball, I think, to Kyer. Because he seems to be the guy with his athleticism, with his build, who can get into the lane, drive and dish. Can that be Matherin, the guy you need to get you the bucket? Maybe, but he's the one who started a little slow. I know he's put up some good numbers, but he's been maybe the least impressive based upon last year.
Agreed.
The good news is I think you've got 7 guys who can score on this basketball team.
Right.
And maybe 8. I mean, when you're bringing Kyer off the bench, you're bringing Pelle Larsson off the bench.
Kim Aiken Jr.
That is giving you that ability to, again, score in different ways. If you have to go small, you put Aiken at the 4. Heck, maybe we're going to see some sets where you have to put Aiken at the 5 and play super small ball and use your length. But there's versatility there. There's a lot of options. But again, what happens when we get into one of these games where you need to drop the play? How will Lloyd fare then? When you have to juggle those personal fouls, when do you put your 4-foul guy back in? When do you call that timeout? When do you foul for 3? And the half-court set is something that's going to be very interesting because we haven't seen a ton of it. And when Arizona has gone cold, a lot of it's been, playing half-court basketball. Again, am I panicked about it? Not at all. Because again, I think they got 8 scorers on this team, or 8 guys who are capable of going off for 8 to 14 points, and obviously some more. But again, we haven't seen it. What happens in crunch time? Kirk Kriisa has not played a lot of crunch time. Kyer hasn't necessarily had the ball in his hand in crunch time in a big spot. I know he did it the first school, 3 years ago. But that's the next big step, and that's what we need to see. But again, when you can play defense as well as I think this team is going to be able to play defense, you're going to be in good shape because it's going to be hard to blow out this team, I think, as well.
Shu, what do you think about Bob? What do you think about Bob's remark from Bob, my Safeway friend, who I met in person about a week and a half ago?
Did you know? What about
I did.
about the specific scorer situation? I don't think we know. And that becomes a very interesting thing to find out as this season evolves a little bit. And let's use, and this will come up from time to time. And I think there's still a significant talent disparity, and the comparisons are by no means perfectly parallel, because we're going to find out that there are a lot more similarities than differences, but there are some differences between what Mark Few does at Gonzaga and what Tommy Lloyd is going to do at Arizona. And there are a variety of reasons for that. But right now, one of the differences for Gonzaga is that they have a guy who, when things bog down a little bit, they go into a half-court set and they say, okay, just get it to Timmy. Timmy's going to do 17 different things with his remarkable footwork. He's going to get people into foul trouble. He's probably going to score a bucket. And I'm not sure at this stage, when Arizona is up against a good defense or 5 athletic people on the other end, how functional that's going to be ultimately in the half court. And that's one of those things we're going to discover, and we're going to find out. We may find out that it doesn't matter, that Arizona can score on the half court. They're still going to score on the open floor, and that's going to be enough to get it done. And they may have 4 guys on the floor at any given time who are able to get it done and score comfortably. Right now, we just don't know. I think it's an excellent question, and one of the lingering elements that maybe we're going to get a better gauge on over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks.
All right, Jacob Franklin, who makes everybody up here look cool. He is our intrepid producer, putting all the stuff done behind the scenes. Jacob is also an ASU alum. I like Jacob, so I'm not going to hold that against him. But Jacob says, Mike, what's it like having a team that takes care of business? Well, I say that you come root for Arizona basketball here, Jacob, because ASU basketball is just not going to be good. I'm in my mid-30s. They've never really mattered. Hop on over here. You can keep the football, but you know what? That would be my suggestion as far as looking for a team that can take care of business.
I think that's a good idea. And also, Mike, in regards to that, you've told us how tall Jacob is. So if I stand on Brad's shoulders, then Jacob can look up to us, just as ASU looks up to Arizona basketball.
There you go.
But barely, too.
But barely.
Yeah. Well, ASU, as we know, is a football school, guys, right?
Oh, I've heard that they're a sleeping giant.
They'll always be. All right. One thing that's not a sleeping giant, though, is DraftKings Sportsbook app. Putting code word PHNX, $5 down on an NFL game for new customers. And guess what? You get $100 in free plays if either team scores. You know what? I'm not great at betting. I don't know about Schuster. I don't know about William. But I think at the same time, all of us, if we were new customers, would probably be playing with $100 free there. Is that fair to say, fellas?
Mm-hmm.
As long as the Jags are not playing the Lions in a monsoon, and even then, there's probably the defensive score. So yeah, I think you're safe. I think you're safe on that one. Although if you're going to, you might want to play the Chiefs Dallas game. There could be a lot of offense in that one. I think you're guaranteed to get a score in that one.
You'll probably get it in there again. DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. They won't ask you, but if they do ask you, tell us that one of the three of us sent you. Makes us look cool. All right. Now, Nick Howard wants to put up. I'm sorry, Jacob. ASU basketball looks up to GCU. Just figured I'd throw that.
Did GCU destroy NAU's program? Although NAU won by like 60 the other night against some team I've never heard of. But NAU used to be pretty darn good. I think GCU destroyed them. I mean,
Micah Dross, was that his name?
Well, yeah, there's a guy named Ben Howland who was there for a while too.
Oh, yeah, he was good too.
But Mike Adris had that program, and they were in the tournament like twice, but they were pretty much always top 3 or 4 in the Big Sky. And again, the Big Sky has changed. There's some teams that didn't used to be there, but I feel bad for NAU basketball because it used to be a pretty good product, and now, unfortunately, just not really. And I think GCU is part of that problem.
Man, all right, it's got to be tough because ASU is now like the 4th best program in the state.
Well, you got Arizona Christian. You got Benedictine of Mesa. Is Arizona International University still open down at the Tech Park? Todd Holthouse's team at Pima. I know they play women's ball, but they're really good.
Jacob, I just want you to know that I fully appreciate you because without Jacob, I can't get on here and talk with you guys. So, Jacob, there you go. And like you said, you probably don't want to see you playing, although a lot of times 6'7" guys, it's like with Brody Dryden. Brody always tells me I can't play basketball. I bet these guys are actually dunking when they're not around.
Yeah, probably. It's just an embarrassment of riches.
Okay, so let's talk about
just like the 3 of us right here.
Doesn't get any better than that, 3 cast-offs. So look at it that way. So, all right, Sean Seeley makes I think has a good question, and I think I have an answer to this. He said, do we have a rotation locked in yet? Oh, by the way, Sean Seeley, Saguaro grad there.
Go
Brad.
Cougars.
Yep, go Cougs in the house. Do we have a rotation locked in yet? Still looks like an 8 to 9. I think, honestly, and even Lute did this when Lute would say, well, we're going to play 12 or 10 deep or whatever, and it never really happened. Sean Miller did it every single year. I think there's an 8-man rotation here. I think it's pretty much set. I think you're looking at Creasa. I think you're looking at Dalen Terry, Benedict Mathurin, Azulis Tabellis, Christian Coloco, Pella Larson, Justin Kier, and Kim Aiken Jr. Those are the 8 to me. I mean, you might fluctuate if there's an injury, but those are the 8.
I think it's going to be a lot like what Lute used to do. Lute used to have what I would call the 8.5-man rotation.
Right.
Depending on who you're playing. I think we will see games where Omar Ballo against big front lines, and I haven't necessarily looked up and down the Pac-12. I don't think there are a lot of big front lines, but there'll be games he plays 15 to 17 minutes, and then the second half of the weekend trip, he might play 4. And we saw that with Miller. Miller usually had 7.5 to 8-man rotation. But if you remember the team, the Elite 8 team with Derek Williams, that was an 8.5-man rotation where the backup point guard was kind of the odd man out. But Lute did this all the time. And there would be also stretches where a guy didn't practice well, he'd drop down to that ninth guy. So we could see it, and I don't think Kim Aiken's that guy who has a bad practice, but we could see a stretch where maybe, Ballo doesn't practice well, and he drops out and he plays. But there'd be other weeks where he's rebounding and just playing great, and he's going to earn some more minutes. But I think that 8 is safe, and then Ballo's the guy to watch. And again, I think it's a matchup thing. You play bigger front line, Ballo gets more minutes, maybe Aiken loses some minutes. You play a more athletic style front line or smaller front line, then Aiken steals those minutes. Ballo becomes just kind of a spelling the bigs when both of them are tired at the same time.
Yeah, what I like, though, about this team, guys, is that every single team, I mean, even some of there really wasn't. But even with like some of Lute's really good teams, it always felt like there was a little bit kind of like roster filler or dead weight that was playing a little bit. That I use Daniel Dillon as an example. Like a guy out there that probably is just kind of out there. It's not like he's bad, but he's just kind of out there. With this 8-man rotation, and again, I don't want to make it out like this is a Final Four team because it's not. But there's nobody out there that I don't think can contribute in a meaningful way out there. There's no real roster filler, for lack of a better term, on the court there.
Well, one of the things so far that's taken place is that we're also playing in an illusion. We have an Arizona team that has dictated tempo in 3 games and likes to run and score a lot and score on the open floor. Those are all fantastic things. As fans, we like it. Hopefully, as a style, it's good. It's going to attract better players. Right now, they have played 3 inferior teams, and we don't know if there's roster filler, right? Because that's easy.
That's fair.
It's easy to score in the open floor when you're getting steals and making layups and dunks. So when this thing grinds a little bit, and this is going to be one of the things that so far, what I've really liked is that other than, and again, we're very early in the season, and I don't know how well they're going to be able to adjust when teams recognize that Arizona is somebody that you do not want to play fast. You're going to have a good point guard or a series of guards who can dictate tempo and limit Arizona's ability to try to defend you 3/4 court. And and we'll see how good Arizona is in those situations. But until that happens, I think there's a chance that we're going to see Arizona. This is one of the fastest playing Arizona teams that I've seen. I can think of maybe 2 or 3 Olsen teams that were at that caliber. The 98 team comes to mind as one that just didn't mind getting up and down the floor on a consistent basis. And Arizona scored 85 under Olsen on a fairly regular basis. And as this thing shakes down, this current incarnation of Arizona is probably going to be in that nature too. But they don't care. And they are relentless. And they don't stop. And it doesn't matter if they beat you by 15, if they beat you by 30, if they beat you by 50, if they beat you by 65. They have just played one style, and this is it. It's going to be fast. You're going to defend up. And one of the things I really like about it so far is that it's been controlled quickness. Yeah. It's been a relentless. It's not Ernie Kent. Ernie Kent.
You made that point to me at halftime.
Ernie Kent wanted to talk. Ernie Kent wanted to talk about, what we're going to do. Where I think at the time that Kent was, a basketball coach, most notably up at Oregon. I think the shot clock was at 35 seconds. Not that necessarily matters for the point of this. And Kent would talk about, we want to get a shot up in 7 seconds. That's our game plan. It's like, no, Arizona just wants to get the first good shot. And usually, because they get a steal, it happens about 2.5 seconds into a possession. But sometimes if it takes 15 or 20 seconds, so what? As long as it's ultimately a good shot. But there will be enough opportunities if you can play good defense and get open transition chances that you're going to be able to score fairly easily and get a bunch of buckets at the rim or get good-looking shots in the process by virtue of the way this team likes to pass. Ernie Kent's version of this was, we want to play quick, but we're not going to bother with 2 passes. Arizona doesn't seem to mind passing the ball 7 times if it has to in the half court. There was a stat that Olsen used to break out on a fairly consistent basis, and Mike and Brad, you may be able to help me with this because I might have the number off a little bit. Where when Arizona was in a half court possession, The difference between either 2 passes and 3 per possession or 3 and 4 versus possession, I don't, again, remember the exact number, was dramatic. And so per possession in the half court, Arizona under Olsen wanted to make sure that the team passed at least 3 or 4 times, whatever that number is, in any given possession, because Arizona ultimately was much more efficient on the offensive end. This team doesn't seem to have any problem passing the ball. It doesn't matter if it's 10 times or 2, depending on whatever the open look happens to be, or they determine that the open look happens to be. It seems to all work for them, and that's been a great thing to see so far.
I think one thing to think about is Arizona wants to play up tempo. There's a difference between fast and up tempo. Miller's team sometimes tried to play fast, and they thought they had to chuck up an Alonzo Trier 27-footer 4 seconds into the possession. You could play up tempo and play under control. And I think you're right, Stu. I think it was 3 passes, might have been 4. But go back if you can on YouTube. Watch 88. Watch 98. I think it's 01. Those teams were all up tempo. Those teams passed, but look how quick the ball moves around. That 88 team especially. Kerr would bring it up, get to McMillan. McMillan would get to Elliott. Elliott would get to Cook back to, and all that's happening in faster than the announcer can announce it. Al McCoy would have run out of breath because Al McCoy likes to tell you each guy who touches the ball. Right. I don't want to compare this team to those teams
or the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, but those Olsen teams not only passed, but not a lot, but they passed quickly. That ball did not stay in your hand very long. You weren't taking the past 3 dribbles, set the screen. There might have been a screen, but everything was crisp, fast. Everyone knew where they were. Mike, I want to go back to your point. I think this team 1 through 8 is pretty legit.
Yeah.
My big question is, how are they at 1 and 2?
Right.
Tubelis is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Is Matherin? We think he is. Matherin's a pro, and I'm sorry if you hear my dogs. They're playing in the background, if that's bothering you.
It's a live stream. Go ahead.
Also, by the way, I got someone who just texted me who said it was 4 passes. So much appreciated out there.
Yeah, but you were absolutely right. Lute had that number. Lute loved numbers because he also had the shots, points per shot was a big number he loved. But the fact is, I think my eyeballs tell me, I think I've been doing this long enough. 1 through 8, Arizona's really good. There's not, apologies, there's no Joe Turner. There's no Andy Lee. Who was the 8th or 9th guy on 98, 97. But Jason Lee, sorry. Andy, there's an Andy on one of those teams too. But behind Tubelis, is there a star? Is there another guy who can get you? And again, Matherin
excellent
can.
Question.
So that might be the difference between this being, I don't know, 02.
Right.
And 02 had a superstar adjacent, but 02, which, again, very deep, very loaded, top 4 seed. A lot of Lute's teams were 3 and 4 seeds. This might be a 5 or 6. And that might be the difference, though, between this team being a round of 32, a Sweet 16 team, and an Elite 8 Final 4 team is just absolute star power.
Okay, briefly, guys, we've got a couple minutes here. Nick Howard said, Mike, do you still think that this is a top 25 team? And I haven't seen anything to dissuade me from that. Again, guys, Brad, Shu, I don't think this is a top 5 team, but this certainly looks on paper, or this certainly feels when you watch them like they've got all the components in place to be a top 25 team pretty much all season.
They're a hell of a lot of fun to watch at the very least. So it feels like they're going to win a lot of games decisively, and that is probably going to keep them in the rankings for a good portion of the year. At the very least, I'm looking forward to those Oregon games. I'm looking forward to those UCLA games. Those are teams that aren't going to back down from a tempo standpoint, and those are going to be a lot of fun. Now, maybe Arizona gets run off the court. Who knows, by better talent, but we'll find out. At the very least, it hasn't taken long for us to feel pretty damn good about what we're seeing in regards to the trajectory of Tommy Lloyd's tenure at Arizona.
For sure. Brad?
Mike, you and I like research, and I think I'm going to look at this week is I'm going to look at Arizona teams who stockpiled the blowout wins at the beginning of the year. And my guess is we are going to see that the teams that blow out teams, by 20, 30 plus are pretty good basketball teams. And again, I go back to I think this was the 11 team, or the 12 Elite 8 team, the second year under Miller. And they had blown out. They started a little rough, but then they had blown out some teams. And the joke was, I think I threw down all my pocket change, including a mechanical pencil, and said, I'm in. I'm buying this team.
Right.
And they ended up being pretty darn good because
they were.
When you can blow out bad, inferior talent, but not just blow out, not beat them by 18, not pull away late, but just really curb stomp them early and often, like some of the Olsen teams, you tend to be pretty good. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good enough to beat UCLA and Oregon and USC, because USC is doing that to all the teams they're playing too right now.
Great.
Right. But Oregon's scuffling a little bit, and we know Oregon's going to be good. UCLA, again, they beat Villanova, so they're the kings right now. But even they've had a couple rough outings. But typically, and again, I'm going to look back, I don't remember many teams that were doing similar things that were really pretty good basketball teams, barring something bad happening, an injury, the chemistry problems we saw a few times late in the Lute Olson era. But I think that's a number I'm going to look at this week is teams that stockpile these, again, just curb stomping victories. What is their average margin of victory? Isn't it 30 something right now? 40 something? It's ridiculous. And again, they're not good basketball teams they're playing. Maybe North Dakota State on a neutral court with 3 days rest would have been pretty good. But, again, 24-hour bus ride from Vegas a night after going down to the wire. It wasn't their brutal night.
Right.
But to still win by 40-something over that team, I think this is an impressive victory.
Guys, I'll leave on this note. Had a couple people mention this, and it certainly is noticeable when you go to the game that it's at about 80% capacity. I was telling my mom this earlier today. I just attribute that to people here not being really sure about what's going on. Arizona hasn't been great of late. I would be very surprised if McHale isn't filled by the time conference play starts, fellas. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Brad.
I think it's two things. One, a wait and see. Who is this guy? I think a little people were burned. They thought they were going to get a bigger name or at least an alum. I also think it's the product of the schedule. I mean, granted, I think you could have gotten in the door tonight. There were tickets on like one of the ticket apps, and I don't know who's your sponsor, so I don't want to shout out any, but you could get in the door, I think, for $4 tonight for the upper tank. But that's because you're playing North Dakota State. And again, if you're a college hoops fan, you're like, oh, they've had some good teams. But, who was it the other day? Texas Rio Grande Valley.
Everybody has a college basketball team now.
I had not heard of them till their coach died last year. I'll be really honest, and I follow college basketball. But let's wait what happens when a team they've heard of comes in. When Pac-12 play starts, or even, I think they get Wyoming at home in a few weeks. And that, again, Wyoming, I don't know how good they are, but that's a name at least. It's a state. You play a state school. I'll be surprised.
We got a low bar around here, fellas.
Well, but to the casual fan to shell out $40 or $50 for a ticket, you want someone you've heard of. And you knew NAU probably wasn't going to be a very good game because it traditionally isn't. But yeah, let's see what happens when some name brand programs come in here. And my guess is McHale will be rocking. And the good news is it sounds like the students are coming out already, that they have supported Tommy Lloyd so far. And that's a nice thing to see.
Yeah, it is. I don't think this is going to take long at all. The question is how long before the secret is out. And if Arizona keeps truncheoning teams by somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 and 50 points, then folks are going to like the idea of playing an up-tempo style again and getting excited about Arizona basketball. The 80% that are in McHale now, I think all things considered, is pretty good. Getting up to 95 to 100 based on the way that this team plays, I don't think is in the not too distant future. I think things are fine at McHale.
All right. The thing that's also fine is PHNX, AZ Wildcats podcast. What's cool about it, I get to bring on all the people that I want. John Schuster, Brad Allis. We have both have obviously open invitations to always be on. Our guy Tony Gimino is I'm sorry, it's so hard to say that.
Can we just call him Tony Bada Bing Gimino? I mean, that was his old fantasy football team.
Tony Jamino, we got Matt Muehlbach coming on tomorrow. What does Matt really know other than about everything?
Matt has a great rooting taste in football teams, by the way.
He really does. Geez. Matt, actually, and I hope I don't get him in trouble during this, Matt was actually liking some of my tweets during the game today, which made me feel very important.
Wait, while he was broadcasting? Well, you know, while he was broadcasting, he was multitasking.
When you're working with a pro like Sidney Brunson.
There you go.
Yeah, seriously, no. But honestly, it wasn't about Matt. I made this about me right now because, quite frankly,
beautifully done.
I was flattered. Hey, by the way, I'm not
going to. That's how your last mentor taught you.
For sure. Very, very. That's so true. So true. Mentor. Nick Howard. I'm sorry. Nick Howard, I'm going to leave on this. I missed the up-tempo offense shortly after KO took. You know what, Nick? You're one of my favorite people out there. You've been a great supporter. Let's keep all KO comments positive. Oh, by the way,
I think the KO. I look forward to Tommy Lloyd running that circle play, the circle play, the circle play, the circle play, that Budinger Bayless circle play about 75 times per every possession. I think that's going to be fantastic offense. And, so far, Arizona offensively, I think we can all agree, has been really disappointing so far under Tommy Lloyd. And I think all of us want to go back. We long for the KO era when you ran one play, somehow managed in a 40-minute game to play your two starters for 57 minutes per game. And it was a remarkable time
at the first time out for the whole game.
And it was a remarkable time for Arizona basketball indeed.
All right, everybody out there, this has been fantastic. This doesn't happen without you. The numbers are off the chart right now. Especially appreciate all the comments.
Yeah, it has been great to have people on board. Much thanks.
We take if we can't take calls, but we certainly embrace all of the listener interaction there. But we'll be back with you again. I'm always bothering Brad to come on. Schuster's always on with me during the post games. William, I know you got the real job now and everything, but at the same time, love to have you on, man.
I'm still working from home most of the time here. We're still on COVID protocols. I don't know if I should be saying that right now, but
there's absolutely
it's easy to hop on during my lunch break. So yeah, just give me that invite.
All right, there's no excuse then. Sean Seeley said, "Thanks, guys. Excellent post game." But for Mr. John Schuster, who obviously has been at every game, William Brad Allis, who we certainly want to be here. I am merely Mike Luke. Everybody, thanks for listening to the post-game show on Wildcats Radio. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to cut that out. I've said that so many times in my life that it was like.
You want to hear the craziest one? Shu and I met at an old station.
Oh yes,
and we would work crazy. That's back when you had to have a board op 24/7.
Right.
So you'd in the middle of the night be like, "Yeah, you're listening. Yeah, thank you for calling." I say KTUC.
Right. All right.
I have at times picked up the phone at home in the middle of the night 10 years later in my early 30s, married,
right,
and picked up my house phone and said, "Thank you for calling 1400 KTUC. May I help you?"
It's
so
crazy.
I understand, Mike.
I've caught myself a few times on sign-offs. This was the first time where I actually got halfway through.
Have you called the pregame the postgame and the postgame the pregame yet?
Being that we're just doing post games, you know what? If I screw that one up, then Bob, you really should kill me on that one. But
Bob loves it. I think Bob takes a shot when you do that because I see him tweet that one out.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. Like I said, I was very flattered that Bob recognized me when I was in Safeway because I had never talked to Bob. So again, everybody out there, really appreciate you. Again, for John Schuster, William Brad Allis, I'm Mike Luke. You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.